and seen the sometimes terrible consequences of casual sex, she was glad she was still a virgin at her age. To be fair to Don, if she had given in to his demands and slept with him because, as he put it, they were almost there now, he might have been more reasonable about her coming away for a month. Or would he? She thought again of Don. He was handsome, the proverbial tall, dark and handsome, or rather in his case, tall, blonde and handsome, with ice blue eyes. They had met at college where he played for the football team. She had not made it to the cheerleaders' squad. She was too quiet and retiring for that. But all the same he had asked her out on a date, much to the amazement of all the other girls and herself. She had never swooned at his feet like some of them, and she had no idea how attractive she was to men. They had dated on and off until the end of the term. Then he'd gone off to Dallas to study accountancy, and Jean had started her nursing training. So it was a shock when he had looked her out on his return. He had courted her slowly, with old-world charm and southern courtesy, bringing her flowers and gifts for her parents, and at the beginning never putting her under pressure to go all the way. He could be real fun and generous, but at other times, as the months had passed, harsh and rather rough with her. He was a big man and didn't know his own strength. Once they'd started to have a row, he'd grabbed her upper arm and forcibly marched her from the restaurant where they'd been having a meal with friends, or at least his friends. She'd been laughing with a guy called Al, and Don had got jealous. He was prone to that, especially when he'd been drinking. She'd talked a lot to Al because she didn't have much in common with the girls in the party, and in fact she'd formed the opinion that they thought of her as a stuck-up bitch, not into excessive drinking. She'd seen the results of it in her hospital work, or doing a lot of the things they liked doing, such as excessive shopping. That was because she didn't have a lot of surplus cash after she'd helped out her parents. After all, they'd kept her through her training. Sometimes she wondered what Don saw in her. They shared so few interests. Her parents hadn't liked Don, and she knew that, even before her mother had seen the bruises on her arm where he had held her so tightly. She knew that they thought she could have done better for herself. A doctor, perhaps. The bruising had caused a blazing row, and although things had quietened down after he'd apologized to her and said it would never happen again, and was always on his best behavior in front of her parents, she knew they had never really liked him. But when they had died, Don had been marvellous. If only they could have seen how comforting and affectionate he'd been. Jean swallowed. How hard life could be. They'd never seen the gentle, good side of him. Now Don was all she had. That and the photographs she'd been going through in her mother's things. That was why she was here, to see where her mother had come from. Her roots. She reckoned most of Don's problems were her fault, because she continued to insist that they wait until they were married before she gave herself fully to him. Of course there had been moments, as she was sure every woman had experienced at some time in their life, when she felt the frisson of danger of the unknown, and the excitement that came with stepping outside their safety zone. It had happened several times just before her parents had died, when he had come on strong, but always she stiffened, stopped him, and clearly he was feeling more and more frustrated. For that she felt a terrible guilt. But for her it was a matter of principle. And since the loss of her parents, now more than ever, she wanted to be like her mother on her wedding day, a virgin. Lately he'd only ever taken her out when there was a gang of them, never on their own. She couldn't remember the last time that had happened. It was flattering that he liked to show her off, but just the once would have been nice. Sometimes they had started that way, but inevitably they always seemed to bump accidentally into a couple of friends whom he insisted on buying a drink, and she was left on the sideline, wearily waiting for the time to go home. Men were selfish by nature, she had noted. They did what they liked, when they liked, fished, went to football matches, and drank with their buddies as and when it pleased them. Don was no different from the rest of them in that regard. Selfishness and not paying her attention was one thing, but when she had announced her